Hi everyone, it's Denise with Wondubar Crafts. In this video, we are going to finish up our Crazy Stairway to Nowhere wall hanging. We didn't have time in the last one. I think it was getting a little too long. So anyways, what you're going to do is take your 2-inch strips that you cut for your binding. I chose to use the lighter color to frame my quilt for the wall hanging itself. So I use the same fabric that's in the lightest color that's in my quilt. You don't have to do that. You can bind it. You can use whatever one you want for your binding. Okay, so now I've ironed it out, made sure that there's no, all the creases or anything else from it being folded is ironed out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this piece with the right side up. Let me make sure it's right. Yep, right side up. I got light, really great light coming back in through. That sun is just shining today. So I'm trying to get this done. So I'm just going to lay it. You can measure it, but about 1/4 inch is what you're going to do for the next piece. So fabric side, the wrong side up so that your right sides meet together. And I'm just going to lay it over that 1/4 inch inward from the end of that fabric. And then I'm going to pin it. So it stays in place. All right, and I can readjust it when I get onto the machine. I'm just pinning it in place so when I move it, I don't have to redo it again. Well, I'll probably have to redo it again, but just to kind of show you. And then once again, I'm going to do the same thing with this piece, about 1/4 inch. If you're going to use the line, you can do that. And then see, I've turned this end piece from the wrong side up to the right side up, and then the wrong side up on the next piece of next strip, about 1/4 inch in, and pin it. So what we're going to do is take this over to the machine, and we're going to stitch a diagonal stitch here to attach these pieces. This particular binding here, we're calling it a straight grain. And the reason why is how we cut it, you know, the cross length, so it's a straight grain. It's not cut against the bias. In the next video, I think I am going to do the binding as a biased binding and show you how to cut. I'll show you how to cut those pieces and sew them all together so that you'll know how to do biased binding really for wall hanging, because you're probably not going to wash it that frequent, take it off the wall and wash it that frequently. You don't need that excess stretch against your fabric in the washing machine like you would a throw or a quilt. So a straight grain is a really easy way to put together your pieces and not have to sit there and figure out how many strips you have to cut with a fat quarter or a half yard or whatever. Although I will give you those instructions in the directions, but this is just a very simple way to do it. And you can do this also on your quilts, but be careful when you wash them, because it doesn't give as much with the straight grain in the washing machine. So let's take it over to the machine and get those pieces sewn together. So I'll meet you over there. All right, so we just got done doing our stitch in the ditch piecing. So if you haven't already done so, make sure your stitch length is back to a 3mm or a 12 stitch per inch. And you've got it on, you know, your straight stitch. If you used a different foot other than your standard, make sure you take it off, and you're going to put your standard stitch or your standard foot stitch, your standard foot back on. Okay, I'm not using my 1/4 inch guide with this because it's a guide to pick it up, not to like a straight edge. But since we've got fabric over here, we can't do that. So all right, I'm going to take this pin out and just make sure that my edges are straight here. And then I put my projector on so you guys can see. The red line is my stitch line, and my green line is my 1/4 inch from the edge. And I can start it further out from the fabric. You don't have to start it right on. And then I am just going to take and stitch this and make sure that my line goes kind of diagonal, so I meet right here at this edge. There's no need to front to back stitch on this one. It's like a piecing stitch. And then we're going to come and find that other piece, which is the other direction over here, and do the same thing. All right, let me readjust this one. Just so from corner to corner. So now what happens is we're going to cut this to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So we're going to take our ruler and we're going to cut it. But now you have one nice continuous piece that your edges should even up to. So let's go back over to the workstation and trim that up. And then I'm going to show you what you need to do to iron. All right, so now I'm going to take that little edge and I'm just going to lay it flat. And what I like to do is just lay my seam right on that line. And then I'm going to take just a small squaring ruler. And then I'm going to put that so that I know that it's marked out in 1/4 inch increments. So I'm just going to lay that one line right on that line because I know my stitch line is there. And I'm going to cut it so that I have a 1/4 inch right here. Now you're going to have a dog ear. That's what they call it, the little dog ear. And I'm going to show you how to trim those up in just a second. So let's get the other side done. I'm going to lay that seam right on that line, right there. And then take my ruler, lay that 1/4 inch line right on that line. Cut that off. All right. So now got a dog ear. So when you go to iron this, you're going to iron it with your seam open. But you don't want those dog ears sticking out the end, right? So what I suggest is you iron your seam, your seam allowance open. So you're going to open it up and you're just going to iron it flat like that. Then you can come back and snip off those little edges. So let me go to the ironing board and do that real quick. All right, so I've ironed my seam allowance open, just like that. And what I like to do is lay it with my fabric side open up against that line. And I'm only going to take off that dog ear. Okay. Same thing here. You don't have to line it up. I mean, you can, if you can make sure that you can see your fabric through your ruler, you can just line it up that way. But there we go. So now we have one big nice seam, one big nice long piece for our binding. So now we're going to have to iron it in half. So with your wrong sides together, you're just going to meet it up just like that. Okay, and what I suggest is, I have pins that I keep. I keep 3 little pins on the end of my ironing board. And this allows me so that when here, let me show you here. grab my little ironing board just to kind of show you what I do. I'm going to take it to the end of my ironing board and I'm going to fold it in half. And then I'm going to pin it in place. And then that way I can kind of just straighten it out and run my iron about halfway down, iron it up, bring it down, iron down to here. Just make sure it's even. And then once that's ironed, I can take my pin out, move that portion that's ironed, and repin it, just so that it keeps it secure while I'm ironing. Just like that. All the way down. So just fold it in half and iron it, just like that. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how we're going to pin it to our quilt top. Okay, so now you should have a nice big long piece of binding strip that's folded in half, just like that, and ready to attach to your quilt top. So grab your quilt top. You should still have your borders pinned. All right, and let's shift this over a little bit. Now I'm going to tell you, these are where these little clips come in so handy. I get mine. You can get them at Walmart. You can get them at Hobby Lobby. You can get them at a sewing store. But I will tell you, you're probably going to pay more at a sewing store than you would at at Hobby Lobby or Walmart for them. You can even get them on Amazon in bulk, because that's what I've done with like the color ones. So anyway, so placing our binding, what we're going to do is we're going to find, just about the middle of one side. It could be the top, bottom, either side. I like to start mine on the side. And I am going to lay it right up against that edge. But we want our raw edge, that raw edge, the cut edge where it's open here, and the seams on the inner portion towards the inner portion of the quilt. Lay that right on there and just start clipping through all 3 layers. Or you can pin it or use safety pins. But because it's so thin, you want to make sure that you have enough room to make sure that it keeps attached. So I'm just going to come down to one corner. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to fold this down approximately 1 inch. So you can use your, your map if you want. Doesn't have to be exact. So, but what I like to do is kind of turn it down so that I've got a little bit of an angle here, right there. And we're only going to pin down to one end. Then I'm going to take all of this attached over to the machine, and we are going to clip as we go once we get to a corner, because I'm going to show you, we're going to do mitered corners. Okay, so that's giving it's giving a diagonal look to your corner. So get everything moved over to the sewing machine and I'll meet you over there. Okay, so I've backed the camera out a little bit because I need to show you what we need to do to turn our corners to make the miter corners. So I'm going to change out my foot again. And I'm going to just use my 1/4 inch guide because it's an edge, a 1/4 inch edge. And now, let's see, I can put my guide here. And bring it down a little bit. There we go. Now, to begin, you are going to want to back stitch this piece here. So make sure you have your length on your 3. All right, and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance there, we're going to go forward, and my machine's set to do a back stitch. And we're just going to make sure that binding stays on that edge. And we keep a 1/4 inch seam allowance there. I like having that little guide there. I'm going to smooth it out a little bit and just make sure that it stays nice and straight, smooth. There's no puckering. And I'm going to take it all the way down to about a 1/4 inch before the end of my binding, where it comes to the end of the corner, and then I'm going to do a back stitch and cut my thread there. Oh, I see what the problem is. I'm not allowing it. It's bunching on the back side. I had a pair of scissors there that was preventing it from going where it needed to go. Okay, so I'm going to take that clip out, and I want to keep my finger here to make sure that I'm keeping it down on there. And then I'm going to come to about a 1/4 inch, one more stitch, and then I'm going to back stitch it, and then come forward again and cut the thread. So now what I need to do, let me grab it. Pile them over here. Now, see if you guys can see this. Make sure you guys can. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my binding in that corner, and I'm going to come straight up at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so right here I should have like a half triangle here, right there, like one edge of it. So it comes up at a 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to keep my finger there, and I'm going to pull it down over the top of it so that the top should square back off, and that it's aligned with the top of that quilt. And then I'm going to clip it. Then I'm going to come all the way down to the one edge, down this edge, and I'm going to clip it all along here so that they are attached. Sometimes it's much easier to do it the machine, because I didn't want to keep moving back and forth, sliding this thing across the table to the workstation. And then once again, all the way down, and that's it. And we'll do the same thing on that corner. So we are going to, I'm going to move that clip all the way over to the edge so it's still holding on, and I can still get it by, maybe. Maybe not. I don't think it's going to go by. I have this little nub here, so I'm going to hold on to it. But if you don't have a nub, keep it clipped if you can. And then you're going to back stitch again and then just sew that 1/4 inch all the way down and do the same thing at that end corner. So let me go ahead and do this edge again so that you guys can see it one more time. And you may have to put your binding in your lap as you sew. That's okay. Just re-smooth it out as you go, just like you did when you were stitching in the ditch. But think of it this way, guys, you're almost done. Almost done. All right. I'm going to lift that up because I think it's catching in there. There we go. I don't know why, but I've got it keeps wanting to slide over. And I don't think I quite got a 1/4 inch all the way down, so I may have to redo this edge again. Not a big deal. Yeah, because I think the edge up there was a little, it wasn't quite a 1/4 inch because I think my fabric shifted, but that's an easy fix because I can just run another stitch down it at a 1/4 inch before I turned. But I want to get it tacked down. Okay, so I'm going to back stitch there. And let me go ahead and fix this because as you can see, I don't think this is quite. Let me grab my ruler. A 1/4 inch. Yeah, it's off just a little bit. So I'm going to run another stitch down, make sure that it's 1/4 inch. So give me just a second, and then we'll come back and miter that next corner there. All right, so let me explain what I did. I reran the stitch back down at a 1/4 inch, and because the stitch was shorter than a 1/4 inch, I can go further out because this is going to tuck over, and it's going to just fold over the furthest stitch in. If my stitching was more than a 1/4 inch, I would have to take that whole seam out and redo it again so that it was at least a 1/4 inch, okay? But because that it's got that double stitch, it's not going to hurt anything for the binding if that happens. So, but if it's more than a 1/4 inch, then you're going to need to take it back out. So let's miter this corner one more time. So I'm going to take my binding and throw it above my quilt, and I'm going to pull it straight up at a 45-degree angle, just like that. Just give it a little finger press so it's there. See, at a 1/4 inch or a 45-degree angle. Then I'm going to pull it back down to start laying. Get that on there. it's very hard to see. I think that's where I'm struggling with my stitching, because the camera's right in my face. All right, so I'm going to clip that and then clip all the way down, and then once again do another stitch, you know, back stitch all the way down, do that last corner, and then I'll come back and show you how to finish up. Only go, once you get to that last corner, only sew your binding up to about 3 inches before the start of the binding, okay? And I will show you how to finish it off. So, all right, so I've come all the way down. I've got about 3 inches before I hit my start of my binding. So now what I want to do is I want to kind of feed this so that it kind of turns not upward, but it's underneath this portion here. And the reason why I do that, and I'm going to sew about, I think it's 1 inch past, so that I don't have too much bulk ending all in one area. So, yeah, so you're going to do, so you're going to overlap it, I would say about 1/2 inch beyond. So right about here. But do you see how this is below it? So it's going to come down off, obviously off this end, but this allows that top piece to fold over and not have like all one piece butting up and trying to, and they're attached. So go ahead and clip that down there and just continue with my 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to go ahead and clip it down a little bit and work it. All right, so you're going to have some excess here. All right, and it's better to have excess than not enough, because I'm going to show you what you can do a little bit with a little bit of this excess here. So let's take it back over to the workstation over there. Slide back over there. And I'm going to show you how we're going to cut it, and we're going to turn it and sew it again. All right, so let me move this up a little bit. Scissors. So I've come over 1/2 inch from the start, and I am just going to take and snip this just like that. All right, and keep hold of your salvage. Now, this is the fun part. We're going to turn our quilt over so that the back of the quilt is showing, and I am just going to take these little corners here, and I'm going to snip, not the stitching, but just at a diagonal to take that point off of there so it lays flatter. Okay, so I always like to make sure I'm watching on the side that I stitched from so I don't cut off any of the stitching. That would stink to do that and then have to redo all that binding again. Okay, so now let's see, where's the top of my quilt? There's the top of my quilt right here. I'm just going to flip this over all the way along in every corner so that each of my corners is kind of flipped over a little bit. And I know that this is the start and end right there. All right, so starting in this corner here, well, you can start in any corner actually, but I like to start up here, and I'm going to put my finger in there, right? And I'm going to take it from the top and fold it over. So, because here's our seam allowance on the back side. You can do it about a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch over that seam line. Does it have to be exact? No. What I like to do is just fold it over naturally. Give it a little pin. All right. And then I'm going to take, see, now I've got this corner here. And then I'm going to pull this one up and over so that I have a nice mitered diagonal corner. And then I'm going to pin, I'm going to take this clip and clip that corner right there to hold it in place. And then you're going to do that. You're going to clip this all the way around so that you got about 1/8 of an inch over, but you want to make sure that you're over. And it's okay if it's a little over. I kind of like mine snug to the edge. And then I use my 1/4 inch again on this side here. And what happens is it will leave a stitch line just outside instead of it being, you can do it and move your needle another 1/8 of an inch over to get that right in the ditch if you want. I like that little decorative stitch on the outside. And this is the back side of your quilt. So now I'm going to get to this corner. I'm going to turn it up the same way so that it's out. And then turn it over on itself so that I have a nice corner here. And I want to make sure, I want to try and get it to where it has a nice shape to it. So it beds up, it's not overlapping right there. Clip that corner and just work it down again. And just start clipping. I'm going to do that with all 4 corners. So when you get there and you get to the where it after you get that last corner done and you get to where the start and the end of your binding is, come on back and I'm going to show you what to do. All right, so now I am down where my 2 binding pieces meet. So I'm going to make sure that each side of this is clipped up. And this piece here is going to be the piece that is going to overlap a little bit. And then I want to make sure that we try and get it so it lays as flat as possible. And it's okay, but you want this piece, see here, this piece here, to tuck in really nice, if you can get it to tuck in without it bunching up. And you might have to work with it a little bit. There we go. Okay. And you're probably going to have to adjust as you go around. And then we're going to start here and we're going to backstitch and we're going to go all the way around the quilt. Again, 1/4 inch seam. I do a 1/4 inch seam because the 1/4 inch seam, okay, we'll put the stitch line, like I said, right above it instead of in the ditch. If you want it in the ditch, add 1/8 of an inch, which I think is what, 3/8 of an inch. So, and you'll have to figure that one out on the machine because mine, I just tell it and it adjusts the needle base over. So let's go back over to the machine. All right, so now I still have my guide on. I'm I'm going to start right about the end here, and I'm going to back stitch a couple different areas just to secure it. So I'm going to start off with a back stitch. And then when I come over where that edging is, where they meet up, I'm going to go ahead and back stitch there. Okay, and then all we need to do is just make sure that we use a 1/4 inch. There we go. Seam allowance all the way around. Just make sure that you get it nice and snug so you don't get any bunching. And when you get to this corner here, you may need to readjust it. All right. To give yourself a nice fold there. A nice little corner. It may look like it's a little fiddly, and it might be, depending. So I'm just going to come over to about a 1/4 inch there. I can lift it and turn it, and see, I need to do at least one more stitch. And then turn, and keep my 1/4 inch going. There we go. Okay, it's gonna, I think because it's a little thick there. Come on, there we go. And then just do the same thing all the way till you get all the way around, and then back stitch at your end stitch down there where you began to overlap. Just overlap about 1 stitch, maybe 2, and then do a back stitch, and then cut your threads. And I will meet you back over at the workstation. All right, so now we are back at the workstation, and we have our binding on there. If you chose to do it in the ditch, you know, it'll be probably up here more, but let me show you what happened. Because I kept a 1/4 inch, it's just on the other side of the binding, or of the border. I already have one border in the ditch, so I could have done it that way. I don't know. I prefer to have, and it's personal preference really, I prefer to have that nice little decorative stitch around there to kind of block it off. My corners are mitered, okay, so they're nice and pointy. And there are other ways to do, and we'll go over those in future quilts. But now you have this nice wall hanging ready to go up. So let's take a look. Our finished product should be approximately 20.5 by 20.5. So there's my 20.5 right there. Not off by much, like 1/8 of an inch. I mean, that visually, you're not even going to see that on the wall. You wouldn't even know. And this one, right on it. So there you go. Now, last before least, we want to sign our quilt. So on the back, mine is very dark, so I would not, you can use a fabric marker. You can get a permanent style marker. Okay. You probably want a fine tip on it so that you can sign it. This is a darker fabric, so I am going to make a little tag, and we're not going to sew it on or anything, but I'm just going to show you what you can do. So you've got a little bit of excess binding, and if you used a lighter color, right, you can just cut a piece off here. Grab my ruler, and I'm going to go about 4 inches because it's a 4 by 2. We'll keep it even like that. And then I'm going to go and iron this flat back out. So give me just a second here. Okay, so now I have a piece ironed out. Now what I can do, let me grab my, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can ratty-taggy the edges if you want and hand sew it on. That's how I did my template one when I did this. When I did the sew out on this originally, this is the sew out one. Okay. And on the back here, I just hand sewed it, I frayed it, signed it, stamped it on there. And I will keep this in my, I'll start a new little container that'll have all my demo ones on there. But you're going to want to make sure, unless you don't care about stamping on there, use some permanent ink. I like the archival. Okay, you can use any color you want. I have a little stamp that I stamp all my little my journals and stuff with. And I want to make sure it is right side up. It says inspired by life, crafted by hand, one of a kind, art crafted by or created by, and then you can sign it. Okay. You can do this. A lot of people do it with muslin. You can buy the printer sheets that go in your printer and design one that way, if you so choose. And I'm just going to stamp it like so. Okay. Dry up some of that ink. And then I can take a color. Let's use green. The front of it's green and blue. It's more of a tealy blue, so. And I am just going to sign right here. And then on here, I'm going to put January. You can put the exact date you finished it. I'm just going to put the month, 22. Wondubar Crafts. Okay, so now we have a little signature on there. And then we just fold it up. We can fold it and iron it and then hand stitch it on. You can use just a blanket stitch. I would not suggest, because you've already quilted your, if you were going to do something like this, you could, if you didn't have elaborate designs and you knew exactly, could measure out, you could literally sew it on the back side back here. But I would not suggest that, because you just never know how much shifting you're going to get with quilting and all that stuff. So what I would do is fold this down about a 1/4 inch and iron it, top and bottom. So, and then you can take and fold it up like that. So you got a nice little square there. So hold on, let me do that. Okay. So then you just fold it in. So you got my sides up, my top and bottom ironed, my sides in, and just pin it to the back of your quilt. Make sure that it's in right side up. And then just put it in whatever corner you want to. And what this does is it allows generations to come, collectors or any of the sort, to know any information you want to put on there. Okay. Me, I'm just going to blanket stitch it on there. You can actually, do a quilt stitch, just make sure when you do, you don't go all the way through your quilt because you don't want to see this stitching all the way through, obviously. So you just do a pickup stitch and just do a whip stitch or a blanket stitch or whatever, applique stitch, however you want to sew it on there, whatever's comfortable for you to hand sew it. So now, let me pin this on here. I'm not going to sew it on camera, sew it off camera. Let me get that pinned on. I'll sew it on and show you what it looks like when it's all said and done. And then I just want you guys to give you guys a huge pat on the back, because this is an amazing start, right? And I'm going to tell you, you can't, you're not going to pick it up, and it's not always going to be perfect every time, but you can't do something unless you start. So get your fabrics out. If you watch the video and you're still kind of humming and hawing, give it a go. Just take your time. If you have questions, right, ask them in the comments. You can ask me. I always leave my link to my Etsy. You can message me through Etsy if you have a question, or you can email me. And I will leave my email in all of the videos so that you can email me if you have questions about anything. Okay, and I will try to help you as best I can, because this is fun. It seems like a lot, but I'm telling you, when it's all said and done, I mean, look, even though you may not like the colors of this, imagine the colors that you do like and doing it in that. And just, it's a simple thing. It really is. There's no complication. It's all of the blocks were done simply. And it was just a matter of turning a block to give that pattern, but it doesn't look that way when it's hanging on the wall. It looks like you put a lot more effort into it, you know, than you did to make it. So, I mean, not to say you didn't put any effort into it, but what I'm saying is it looks like a complicated pattern, but it really isn't. Okay. So let me get this hand sewn on, and I will show you what it looks like when it's all said and done. Oh, well, you know what? It probably helps if I push that up to show you guys. All right, so what I did was just hand stitched it. Now my quilt is signed and ready to go up on the wall, and I'm just going to use like some straight pins. I just poke them through the wall. They hold up really well. There is instructions in the directions, the quilt directions, on how to make a hanging sleeve. If you made the binding, you should be able to make this fairly easy. And it's just hand stitched on, and it tells you how to do that. And then you slip your dowel in there. And then some people have like a wall rack that they have, or sometimes they'll just put 2 hooks on the end and then just put the dowel, just rest the dowel on there. It's totally up to you. Personally, don't use nails. They do rust, you know, and they're going to poke a big hole in your quilt. A pin, the reason why I like a pin is it's the size of a sewing needle, so it's really not going to do much, you know, it's not going to do any damage. If anything, I've hung mine for years that way and had no issues. So, but thanks guys for joining me. I hope you give it a try. If you do, please post what you did. I'd love to see it. You can post them on my social media at Wondubar Crafts on Facebook, the Facebook Wondubar Crafts group. And those links are in the description below. If you'd like to join, just sign up. And my daughter handles all of that stuff, and so she'll get you approved. And I would love to see what you do. If not there, post it on Instagram. She's currently going to build me a link tree so that I can give you one link and you can go there, and all the links to all my social media, including YouTube and Etsy, will be on there as well. Also, don't forget, in all of these videos, I've listed the link to where you can download on Flickr the instructions for this. Okay, remember 20 pages long. It's free. I'm gonna upload it for free for a few months. So get it now and download it. Even if you're not gonna do it right now, go ahead and download it, and then you have it. Because after that, I'll put it in my Etsy for future use if anybody wants it then. And then next month, just a little heads up, it is Valentine's month. I don't know if we're going to get the quilt done by Valentine's Day, but it will be Valentine inspired, with Valentine fabric. It won't be like a heart style, but we're gonna work with blocks next time. So we're going to do, I think it's a mix of rectangles and blocks, and I think, I'm trying to remember. I've had so much stuff going on. And my son picked a name. It's still rattling around in there, so but it'll be our February wall hanging. Pretty much the same size. It might be a little bit bigger. I think I'm going to do like maybe a 38 by 38. It'll be a little bigger for a little bit bigger section. And that one will obviously, when we get it loaded, it'll go on my Etsy. And hopefully you guys will join me on these. I'm really having fun with these. I really am. And next videos, I guess, I'm still doing the Margaret Millers. I've got my winter journal stuff all pulled out and ready to go. I don't think I'm going to make it a big one. I think I'm just going to kind of do a naked one maybe for that one. But I did want to do some buttonhole making like tag slits in it, so that, because it's a fabric cover, and show you how to use the zigzag buttonhole stitching with it to make it. So anyway, thanks guys for joining me. Don't forget to go download your pattern. And I would really love to see what you guys do. Give it a go, and let me know. Let me know if you think that, what you think of the pattern, how well it was to follow. I'm always open to suggestions, and good criticism. We don't need to be nasty to each other. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's okay. And but give suggestion, because I'm always open to it, and I'm always willing to change something and try something and see if it helps with anyone else. Always learning, always learning. So give it a go, and until next time, guys, plenty of hugs, loves, and blessings. Thanks, guys. Bye.